When I was between 22 and 24 years old, I lived in a small, nice suburban neighborhood. I had a decent job and probably overpaid on my house, but it wasn't the biggest or richest area, just a standard, normal place to live. I really had no bad things to say about living there, but this one encounter pretty much ruined the entire area for me, and I genuinely don't think I'll ever fully get over how disturbing it was. I've always been somewhat of a night owl, staying up late and often would go for long, quiet walks once the sun went down and everyone else in the neighborhood went to sleep. It was peaceful and had a sense of solitude that I really liked. This was on one of those quiet nights where I took my dog, Finn, out for a long walk. Finn was a 10-pound dachshund mix and surprisingly quiet for his breed, very shy and not aggressive or a big barker. We walked for an hour, winding through the empty neighborhood streets, enjoying the peacefulness and taking in the cold weather. To describe the way the houses on the street were, basically, there was a large gap in between each home. There would be a house and then a large grassy field and then another house, and so on. At night, those grassy fields between each home were pitch black because the lights from either house didn't reach that far. As we walked, I suddenly started to hear something through the soft winds. I stopped with Finn next to me. I heard it again. Across the street, in that void between two houses, I was hearing laughter. A girl or woman, it was hard to know for sure, could have even been a kid, was somewhere in the darkness laughing softly, like she was watching me from right there in the shadows. But, I couldn't see a thing. After looking for 10 seconds, I got really uncomfortable and pulled Finn along to keep walking. A few minutes after, I was sure that it must have been a kid just laughing for no reason, probably living in one of those nearby houses. Still didn't make all that much sense to me, but it was whatever. Finn and I walked for another 20 minutes, eventually circling back around and going down that street again on the way back home. When we passed by the dark gap between the two houses where I'd heard the laughter from, the girl wasn't there. I didn't hear any laughter or voices. Another 20 minutes later, we got home. It was so late, I didn't bother going through turning the lights back on. I just headed right upstairs with Finn, showering and getting in bed. Finn slept in the room with me, usually burrowing under my comforter. I was really tired, but I was tossing and turning for a while. I don't think I was thinking about much of anything. I just didn't feel right, feeling the need to open my eyes every few minutes. It went on like that for a while, and I don't even remember falling asleep. I just remember waking up and opening my eyes hours later. The room was dark, and when I rolled over, I didn't feel Finn anywhere on the bed with me. I looked up and saw him sitting right next to the bedroom door, head tilted and ears perked. He didn't look scared or like he had to go to the bathroom, but something definitely had his attention. "Finn. You okay, buddy?" He looked back at me and then walked up to the side of my bed, turning back around and facing the door, then sitting down. He was still focused on the door. Usually, if I called his name, he'd get excited and jump up on the bed, but this was really unusual. And then, I heard it, the muffled, faint sound of laughter, the same quiet laughter I'd heard on the walk that night. I recognized it immediately. Because it was quiet and muffled, I thought the girl was outside my home, like right at the front door. I quickly got up and told Finn to stay, just to keep him quiet and safe, then walked out of the bedroom and closed the door behind me. I went to the stairs and walked down, then approached the front door and looked out the eye hole. The porch was empty. She wasn't out there. I kept looking for a whole 30 seconds, staring at nothing, because I was so sure that I'd heard her. But, then she laughed again. It was louder, not muffled at all. She was inside my home. I turned around. All the lights were still off, but right behind me was the opening to the living room. There was a woman outlined in the blackness. She was sitting on the couch facing right at me, and she had a smile across her face as she let out another horrifying, soft laugh when I saw her. I honestly didn't even know what went through my head in that moment. I'm even surprised that I didn't just faint from the sudden fear. I ran right up the stairs into my room, grabbing Finn and calling the police from the bedroom closet, hiding and hoping she'd stay downstairs and didn't come chasing. From the closet, I couldn't really hear anything, which actually made it a whole lot more terrifying. I don't know whether she came upstairs or not, but 5 minutes later, when police came by, they actually found a woman walking down the sidewalk in the neighborhood. She stood out, being a 40-ish-year-old woman walking in the cold at 3 a.m. with nothing but a thin nightgown on, and she was very clearly not well. They didn't find any weapons on her, but she had a history of violence and didn't even live in the area. She'd been unheard from for 2 weeks by her family 40 miles away, and I guess she had some issues. The family tried to claim she was sleepwalking and just followed me home and broke in without being fully conscious, but I don't know if I buy it. I also don't know if she'd been stalking me for more than just that night, because the way they found she broke in was by smashing a window in the back of my house. Obviously, I would have woken up by that. So, I'm thinking after I heard her laughing and watching me from the darkness across the street, she probably already knew where I lived and my nightly walking routine. So, she watched me walk away, then broke into my home while I was still out, which means when I got home, she was somewhere in the dark, maybe even right there on the couch, watching me as I went straight upstairs to go to bed. Whatever the case, it was all enough to keep her out of the public for a while. I never fully recovered from it, though, and felt like I had to move out of that house. That image of her on the couch quietly laughing with that hollow, emotionless, wide smile is so disturbing and creepy that I still haven't been sleeping well. I wake up constantly throughout the night, feeling like I have to look around and make sure I'm alone. Finn isn't exactly the best guard dog, but having him as a second set of ears to listen for anything makes me feel a little better. This all went down for almost 5 years ago now. The woman was released and everything, but so far, nothing else has happened. I search her name up every so often, just to see, almost waiting and expecting something horrible, but thankfully, it's been quiet. This happened, or I guess started happening, 3 months ago. I lived in a quiet town in a very average area. My house was at the end of the street on a cul-de-sac, and I honestly loved living there. I lived alone and spent most of my time working from home in my small office. The night this started, nothing was off at all. I worked a bit late and was feeling tired, so I went to bed early and fell asleep. When my eyes opened, I saw the clock on my nightstand said 1:50 a.m. The way I felt was as if my body had forced me to wake in the middle of deep sleep, so I felt very groggy and out of it, but I didn't know why I'd woken up so randomly or seemingly so abruptly, like it wasn't my body naturally waking up. My eyes slowly blinked and I started to look around until they fell on the door right in front of my bed. The bedroom door was open, just cracked a few inches, but open regardless. Now, I don't think it's easy to describe how genuinely terrifying it is in a moment to wake up and see your bedroom door open, knowing you live alone in your house and always close and lock the door every night. Obviously, there's always a chance that I'd forgotten to close it or didn't close it fully or whatever, but it was still absolutely unnerving. I got up from the bed quietly and walked over to the door. My heart was racing. I kept all the lights off, not trying to make myself known in case of the worst scenario where someone really was inside my house. I opened the door further and looked out into the hallway. I stayed frozen there for an entire minute, waiting, listening, but there was nothing at all. Eventually, my courage built up enough for me to walk through the house, going room to room and just checking for anything else off. But it was just that one door to my bedroom. Nothing else seemed out of place. I went back to the room and played with the door for a while, too, trying to see if there was something wrong with it. The fact that there was nothing else for me to go off of made this situation hard for me. I didn't know what else to do other than assume I didn't close the door all the way, even though I felt that was almost impossible. I got back in bed and eventually was able to sleep for the rest of the night. In the morning, oddly, I didn't think too much of it, I guess because there wasn't too much else to really think about. I did my usual, making coffee and relaxing for the first couple hours and then working until 6:30. And again, nothing was off. I stayed up watching TV in bed and went to sleep around 10 o'clock. In the middle of the night, I woke up similar to how I had the previous night. It was a little past 2 a.m., but the moment my eyes opened, the first thing I did was look at the door. It was open. I didn't even know how to react. This time was different because I was in my room wide awake watching TV for hours before bed, knowing the door was closed and locked before I fell asleep. I did the same thing, getting up and looking around the entire house. There was nothing else. I didn't know what to think. The door unlocking and opening on its own made no sense, but someone breaking in and opening it also didn't make sense. After an hour, I went back to bed and I don't remember if I even slept that night. But for the next 3 weeks, this continued to happen. Not every single night, but I'd say 3 or 4 nights a week, I'd wake up to the door being open. I even had called the non-emergency police line one day to have them look around and see if there was something I was missing, but the cops didn't see anything either. I don't think they looked all that hard, though, and didn't take it too seriously, but I can't really blame them. So, after those weeks and starting to get extreme paranoia living in my own home, I decided to buy a camera. A cheap, low-quality, off-brand security camera that I could plug in on the nightstand next to my bed and face at the bedroom door. It was kind of a last-ditch effort to figure this out before I'd take the drastic measures of packing up and moving out of there. After work one night, I unboxed it and set it up, making sure it worked and was facing the door. Then, I turned the lights off in the house, closed and locked the door, got in bed and fell asleep. At 1:46 a.m., I woke up. I felt more out of it than usual, but once I saw the camera on next to the clock on my nightstand, it immediately reminded me and I quickly looked over at the door. It was open. I didn't bother going around checking the house this time. I just quickly grabbed the SD card out of the camera, left my bedroom and went to the office, plugging it into my laptop and checking the footage. I went back 2 hours. The door was still closed. I moved it to 1 hour back and it was still closed. Then 30 minutes, 15 minutes, and eventually all the way to 2 minutes back. At 1:44 a.m., 2 minutes before I woke up, the door suddenly made a click sound and then slowly opened. For 30 seconds, it was just pitch dark, unable to see anything in the opening of the door. But then, a figure moved into the room. A man, tall but fairly thin, wearing all dark clothing. He walked extremely slow and carefully, each step not making any noise, and went right up to my bed. He was inches away from me and I was still sleeping, of course, no idea any of this was happening. It was the most disturbing, haunting thing I'd ever seen. The man stayed there for 40 seconds, just looking at me, then slowly and silently walked back out of the room. Not even 20 seconds later, I woke up and the footage cut from me taking out the video card. The realization hit me that all this happened just minutes ago, meaning this guy was probably still inside the house with me. I ran back to the bedroom, got my phone and called 911. I locked the door again, even though it clearly wasn't very helpful. But nothing happened while I waited. Police came and searched everywhere with no traces of the man being found. If not for having the footage, they definitely would not have believed a word I said. I stayed in a hotel for the next few weeks while they did a big investigation, swabbing my house for any fingerprints or clues that they could work with. There wasn't anything. Which means this guy was extremely cautious and carefully and horrifyingly good at what he did. Most likely. He picked the locks to my home every night, didn't touch anything and didn't leave any traces behind. So, the only thing to try and identify him with was the video, which was grainy, dark and had no view of his face. It also didn't really explain any motives he had. The officers and investigators I talked to think this was just some very creepy man that didn't have much of a reason, which is usually the worst kind. Things usually escalate at some point, whether it's because I'd happened to wake up while he was still there or whether he just decided to. It's very unlikely things would have stayed this harmless. I use the word harmless very lightly, though, because this was far from being truly harmless, but physically, I never got hurt or anything. I only feel safe writing this because I packed up my whole life and moved across the country, finally settling into my new place just a few weeks ago. And I really hope this helps someone else to not ignore any strange signs they see. God knows what could have happened if I did. In early October, I was on a road trip back from seeing a bunch of my friends. The drive there wasn't too bad, I think because I was excited to see all of them and had something to look forward to. But the drive back felt a lot longer and painfully boring. This night, I was really tired, but I wanted to get this drive over with as soon as possible, so I pushed myself to stay awake and keep going. Around 1 a.m., I looked down at my GPS and realized I'd messed up. I'd completely missed an exit several miles back. I don't know if from highway hypnosis or just being tired, but it was a pretty big mess up. The next exit to turn around that was 15 miles further, so in total, this mistake added at least 30 to 40 minutes to my drive, which I was already dreading. I thought this was probably a sign that I was too tired to keep driving safely. On the way to the exit, there was a small rest stop, so I pulled in and figured I'd try to sleep until morning. When I got there, it was as empty as the highway was. I didn't have any window covers or anything, so it didn't feel that comfortable sleeping, knowing if someone did pull in, they could just look through the windows at me. But, I was so tired and the roads were so empty that I didn't care. I leaned the seat all the way back and put a hoodie over my head to block out the streetlight, then tried to sleep. I laid quietly, resting for about 10 minutes, never fully falling into sleep, when suddenly I heard someone cough outside my car. It actually really scared me, and I jolted up and looked out the window. I didn't see anyone. The cough was quiet and muffled enough that I wasn't sure how far the guy was, but I knew what I heard was definitely someone coughing. I looked down both sides of the parking lot, but there wasn't a single other car there. How the hell could anyone be out here at a rest stop on the side of a highway in the middle of nowhere if they didn't have a car? I kept looking for a while though and didn't see anything. So, at a certain point, I just had to give up trying to figure it out. I laid back down, but I didn't close my eyes. I just tried to rest. My gut was telling me that something wasn't right though, because I was no longer sleepy. I was tired, very tired, but my brain wouldn't let me even get close to sleeping. Like it was highly aware of something being wrong. An hour went by, so it was about 2:30 a.m. at this point, and out of the silence, I heard a cough again. I sat up immediately and looked in the direction I heard it from, toward the rest stop building, and I just caught a slight glimpse of something move behind the window. Someone was inside there. And not that I wasn't 100% sure of what I'd heard, but actually seeing someone made it way more real and way more strange. I probably sat there staring at the building for a whole 30 minutes straight. Whoever was in there never came out and never went by the windows again. Over that time, the lack of anything happening started to let me calm down, and I know this sounds stupid considering how I just said how sure I was of everything, but I started to doubt myself. I kept circling back to questioning how anyone could be out here just hanging out inside the rest stop building for hours with no car and not showing themselves at all. My mind definitely wasn't thinking clearly on over 24 hours of no sleep, so that's the excuse I'll give. Eventually, I just decided that I had no idea what was going on, and ultimately, if someone was in the rest stop, they most likely weren't a threat to me anyway. I laid back in my seat, still facing the rest stop, but slightly less alert. And slowly, my eyes started to get heavy, and I guess I passed out. When I woke up, it didn't feel that long later, like just about 20 minutes. Initially though, I didn't think anything was wrong. I'd just woken up for some reason. But, as soon as I turned my head, there was a man standing right outside my window, face nearly pressed into the glass, staring right at me with creepy, tired eyes. I'm impressed that my first reaction was to immediately turn on my car and get out of there. But, the instant I did, I felt the car run over something, and I could even hear my tires hissing from air spilling out. I looked back out the window at him, and he was running up to my car, clearly knowing this was going to happen. In the moment, I felt my only choices were to either get out of the car and let him steal it, or maybe even do worse, or to fight this guy. I swung my door open and basically just tackled him to the ground. I don't think he expected it at all. There was a bit of a struggle, but I definitely had the upper hand. I beat him pretty bad, enough for me to be able to run back and get my phone and call the police, then hold him for the 25 minutes I waited for a highway officer to arrive. He was clearly not the smartest, and when the officer got there, he just started screaming and thrashing around, and actually admitted to everything, and said some pretty horrible things. I don't know if they were true, but he probably wasn't just trying to steal my car. And being out in the middle of an empty highway, no one would have been around to see or hear anything. It's also likely he had been watching me the whole time I was there, waiting for me to fall asleep so he could do what he was going to do, which is also just really disturbing and creepy to think about. Thankfully, I'm okay though, and no one else has to be victim of whatever that guy was going to do.